Today, we're going to be really focusing on PubMed and some tools that you can use with PubMed for systematic review searching. We're not going to get into some of the more basic things of systematic review searching, but if you have questions about those, we probably have some time at the end, or you can always put something in the chat, and Kayla will be monitoring the chat. Kayla's here. She's our graduate assistant at the Medical Center Library. She's actually going to be co-presenting with me today. I'm going to be doing a live demonstration, and she's going to go over some of the basics of PubMed. We also have some resources that are available that go over more in depth of systematic review searching. Kayla's actually going to put a link in the chat for you all. I highly recommend looking at the Introduction to Systematic Reviews video, as well as the differences between literature searching and systematic review searching. So with that, I think we're going to go on and get started. Kayla's going to start us off with an introduction to just some general PubMed principles, and I'll chime in a little bit here or there too. So.
Okay. So are you all seeing my PowerPoint?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Okay. So.
Oh, we're seeing your notes section.
This always happens. Always happens. Okay, let's put it over here. And then, ooh.
You can hit display settings too and change the screen orientation.
Okay.
So if you just hit show slideshow.
Last time. Okay. That's so funny. This always happens to me. Like I'm so prepared and then here I go. Okay, display settings.
You can actually do it when you're showing the.
There we go. I got it. Okay. Now I'm gonna do it. Okay. Okay. Are we there?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to New PubMed for Systematic Reviews. I'm just going to be doing a little bit of an introductory session, like Lauren said. So we're just going to go over some not quite so basic features of PubMed, but for systematic reviews a little bit. So what is PubMed? First off, it's a database of more than 30 million citations to articles in the fields of the biomedicine and health. It's owned by the National Library of Medicine, owned and operated. So it has around 2.5 million people who use it, and that obviously includes us, cross-discipline. So you can use it to find specific research on biomedical topics. So it does all of these things: research, health policy, patient advocacy, education, clinical care, and public health. It's just a few of the topics. So as I'm sure if you use PubMed, you might have noticed that the interface changed. It launched last year. So we went from legacy PubMed, as we call it, to the new PubMed. So it has a more modern look. It kind of looks like Google. They changed the algorithm, which we'll talk about a little bit later because it kind of changes the way that we've started searching. And then it actually runs on a cloud instead of on the server. So things are a little bit different, but the thing that you might have noticed the most is the presentation. The interface has changed.
And I will say too that so it was co-running with the old version of PubMed. So you've probably seen a change in the last few months when they've actually gotten rid of the legacy one. So you no longer can search the legacy version of PubMed. So when you go to our website, you'll be seeing the new version.
Yes, yes. We used to have the link to the legacy one too, but now that that's done, it's off of our page. So the new one is the only one you can use, as Lauren said. So the question being, will your old searches work? So if you're wanting to look at or duplicate searches from before the launch of new PubMed, they will work in theory, but it won't be quite the same. So as I mentioned before, there were algorithm changes in the way that the searches run. So there are different search features as well, including truncation features. So there used to be a limit to how many truncation topic keywords you could have. So it was like 500 or 600, and now that's not an issue anymore. You can have as many versions of a word as you can truncate. And then they've enhanced the British to American English spelling crosswalk, I guess. So it did change that. So you're not going to get, you had 1,000 articles in a search in 2018 or early 2019, you're going to have a discrepancy there. So they will work, but you will have either additional or some missing articles depending on the kind of search that you're doing. All right, so I'm going to quickly go over the new PubMed interface before I get into a few of the search topics. So this is the new PubMed, as I've said. You can log in up here with a MyNCBI account, which you can use to save searches, make collections, and that kind of thing. We have how to set one of those up in our tips and tricks workshop, which is in one of the links that I put in the chat. We have this search bar that definitely looks kind of like Google. We have the advanced feature, and then underneath we have some of the old features of PubMed. They just look different. So we're going to go over Mesh, which is under the Explore option in a few minutes. We have the advanced search down here. You have clinical queries, learn how to find full text, which we also do at the MCL. And then it's just some about and help sections and that kind of thing. But we're going to be working mostly in Mesh and the advanced search today. So, all right, where I'm going to go over Mesh, field codes, and truncation before we start the live demo, just some kind of background knowledge before Lauren takes over. We're going to start with Mesh. So if you've never used Mesh before, it stands for medical subject headings. It's indexed by the NLM, and they use it to go through articles and kind of index them by topic. So it's easier to search this way. It's a very comprehensive, very comprehensive vocabulary. So there are quite a few words that are included. And then, yes, so if you're trying to create a sensitive search, you want to use Mesh terms. And especially if you're going to be doing a systematic review, you need to use Mesh terms because it will give you a more comprehensive search. So here's a link down here. We won't go to that, but as I explained earlier, it's under the Explore tab on the homepage. So a tip and trick for Mesh is to do just a basic search. So if you're not sure what the Mesh term would be for a keyword that you're trying to use, you can actually just search it. And then under the search history and search details on the advanced search page, if you click this arrow under details, it will do this drop down for automatic term mapping. Now, automatic term mapping is turned off when you do systematic reviews. So you can't really use this in a systematic review, but you can use it to help you find terms. So if you're doing a systematic review on acid reflux, you have when you hit the drop down, you see a bunch of other terms that it searched alongside acid reflux. So the first term is gastroesophageal reflux. So that is the Mesh term for acid reflux. And then you could go into your Mesh database, type that in, and then see the scope note, which we're going to go over next. When you click on the Mesh database, it's going to take you to a page that kind of looks like this, but obviously without the term. It still looks like the old PubMed because they haven't gotten around to updating the Mesh database yet. So it looks like the old PubMed, but it's of course still usable. So when you go in, let's say you're still doing acid reflux, when you type in acid reflux, it takes you to the gastroesophageal reflux page. Now before, especially with a systematic review, before you just put this in, you add this to your search builder or search it in PubMed, you're going to want to check the scope note, which is essentially just a definition of what this term means in the Mesh subject headings. So it's right here, right underneath the title. It's a retrograde flow of gastric juice, gastric acid, and or duodenal contents. So if that is what you're searching for, you're going to want to click the Add Search Builder and then search in PubMed, and of course, build your search from there. But Mesh also has a few other features that are really important for systematic reviews, including the year introduced. So that's right underneath the scope note. So if you're doing a comprehensive, let's say that you're going back to, I don't know, the 60s or 70s, and looking at acid reflux, if there were another term for acid reflux before 1984, you would have to find that and use that as well. So for something like 1984, you may not need to do that, but if it's a term that was introduced in like 2018 or 2019, you might need to check to see if it was indexed as a prior indexed term.
Yeah, a really good example of that is internet-based interventions. That's a new area of research a lot of people are working on, and it was just added into MESH in 2020. And prior to that, it was indexed and under internet. So the goal is to make sure you're going backwards and looking for the previous terms. And also, Kayla might be saying this in a minute, but it usually does tell you in the definition area what the prior index term was. So you don't have to like know, you can actually just click it. But that is a really good example of one that was added recently.
Yes. Yes, definitely. As Lauren said, it would say that. This one obviously doesn't have a prior index term because it was introduced in 84. So it wouldn't be shown here, but for a term like internet-based intervention, it would be showing you the prior index term. Okay, so the next important thing about MESH is the entry terms in the tree hierarchy, which is this very long kind of slanted list of terms. So an entry term is essentially just another word for the term that you searched. So mine is highlighted because I have the feature turned on in my NCBI, which of course we show you how to do in the tips and tricks research video. But you can see that the entry terms for acid reflux or gastroesophageal reflux are here. So gastric acid reflux, comma gastric, those are things that are going to be searched alongside gastroesophageal reflux. So here's a button. So if you're looking at GERD or esophageal reflux, it's just other terms that are being searched along.
Yeah, so if you put those into MESH, then they're going to automatically tie it to this MESH term. Like, so if you're searching acid reflux, that's a known entry term for this MESH term. And this is a really great place to go when you're working on systematic reviews, is because it gives you more keywords that you can use and it also helps you figure out all the variations of those terms. And sometimes it has acronyms like GERD here. So this is a really great place to go, and you should be trying to OR in every single term from this entry term that you can. And I'll show you in a minute how you can like truncate to kind of get some of the more variants without having to type them all in, especially in the new PubMed that they allow you to do that. But yes, this is a really great place to go to find more keywords as well.
Yes, definitely. And then another important feature to look at is the tree hierarchy. So because I have it highlighted, you see that gastroesophageal reflux is the third from the bottom. So you can kind of see how they've indexed it and where that falls underneath other terms. So the terms underneath gastroesophageal reflux are narrow terms, and then the terms above are broader terms. So let's say that you want to, maybe you're not looking at acid reflux specifically, maybe you're looking at the disorder itself. So you could go up to broader terms to deglutition disorders, and then kind of search under that and see what other types of disorders are indexed along with gastroesophageal reflux. It's also good if it's indexed under multiple different headings. So some terms are indexed under diseases, but they're also indexed under something else. So it would have two tree hierarchies, and you can kind of see what it will search underneath those two different tree hierarchies.
And I can show you some of that too here in a moment when we get into the live demo. It's also important to know that MESH does this thing called auto explosion. It's the only database that really does this. So it's important to look at these tree structures when you're building a systematic review search in PubMed in particular, because PubMed is going to automatically search laryngopharyngeal reflux. It's going to search everything underneath gastroesophageal reflux. It's automatically doing that for you. So if you go up higher into the hierarchy, it's going to be doing things. Can you go forward really quick? It's going to, if you go up to like gastrointestinal diseases, it's going to be searching everything that you see there and everything you don't see there, because each one of those terms have more terms underneath them. So it's just a big tree. So it's important to know that when you're searching PubMed, and also trying to think about this when you're moving into other databases, is that PubMed's automatically searching laryngopharyngeal reflux, but that doesn't mean something like Web of Science is. So if you want to search for that one in particular, you need to look at these tree structures to try and find which terms that you will want to make sure that are searched in other databases. So that's just something to know also about these tree structures.
Yes. So to not explode, you would need to hit this button underneath restrict to mesh major topic that says do not include mesh terms found below this term in the mesh hierarchy. So if you didn't want those terms, you would have to hit that button and then check that button and then search the term. So as Lauren said, it's important to know what's underneath and then decide if you're going to restrict or not.
And just remember that PubMed is the only database that automatically explodes. All the other ones you have to tell to explode. PubMed, you have to say, don't explode. So that's one big difference between other databases.
Okay, so we're going to go over quickly keywords versus mesh. So
can I do one other, can you go back one other slide?
Yeah, of course.
There's also something I want to talk about, the CIASO terms. This is a really great place to go and look at related terms. So PubMed inside a mesh will link often CIASO terms. So like heartburn is one there. And so maybe you wanted, if you're looking at acid reflux as your mesh, as one of your mesh terms, as one of your major topics in your systematic review, you might want to look at heartburn because some people might have indexed under that. And you can compare definitions. And that's one thing about these mesh terms, is that often you have to read the definition. In this case, it's really not like you know what it is, but some of them are defined by things that you wouldn't always think that they are. So it's just really important to look at the various definitions and some of the CIASO terms to help build your term list. And I'll kind of show you that in a minute too, how I go about doing that as well. Sorry, Kayla, just want to throw that out there.
Oh, good. Okay, I'm glad. Cool. So before we move on from mesh, I just want to quickly go over what keywords are versus what mesh terms are. So keywords, unlike mesh, are not hand indexed. They're sometimes author supplied or known phrases in PubMed, which Lauren will also show you later. You're looking at the indexed phrases, which are not mesh. So if you search a keyword, you can either put it in the phrase or not, but it's not going to search the mesh structure. So it's also used to catch the newest articles, which is why you want to search keyword and mesh simultaneously, because keywords are going to catch the newer articles that came out in the past few months, while mesh is a little bit behind on indexing because, as I wrote, it is hand indexed and hand read by the NLM indexers. So mesh is, of course, accepted terminology by NLM, and it has many different, it has, what is that word? It has its own database where you can search. So it's accepted terminology. And then, as I said, the newest articles are not often immediately indexed, especially right now where they're a little bit slow. So you're always going to want to use keywords alongside mesh if you're doing a systematic review. And then before I let Lauren take over, we're going to talk about field codes really briefly. So the really important keywords you need to know are title abstract and text word. So title abstract, it searches both the title and abstract fields. So the as you can see, the brackets under here have TIAB, which of course stands for title abstract. So when you're searching and you don't have the mesh field code, you'll have either the title abstract code or the text word code. You can also individually search title and abstract by putting title in its own and abstract in its own, or you can do title \abstract. So there's a few different ways you can do title abstract searching in PubMed. The one that I use the most is TIAB because I like to catch them all at the same time, but if for some reason you need to do them separately, you can do that as well. And then the add terms to query box, you can also type a term in where it says enter a search term, and it will, and then hit and or add, and it will add that term with the field code. So if I typed in acid reflux and then hit add, it would have acid reflux in quotations with the brackets that says title. And then next, we're going to look at text words. So text word, it searches everything in the article's records, not just the title and the abstract. So that would be the other one that you would use for systematic reviews. So that one is TW. You can also, as I said before, type something into the search bar, hit add, and then it will do acid reflux bracket text word. So that's how you would do those two different field codes. And then lastly, we're going to look at truncation, which I'm going to talk a little bit about, but then Lauren's going to take over to finish off the issues with truncation. So in PubMed, truncation is delineated with an asterisk. Truncation is put at the end of a word to catch the other spellings or variations of that word, including other phrases with that word. So if you put acid and then had an asterisk, it would catch acid reflux, it would catch acidity, it would catch other kinds of words. So here's an example of that. If you truncate minor, it's going to search minority, minority groups, minority and groups, minors, and those kind of things. So if you're looking at minors, not minority groups, it's important to know how that is searching, so you don't accidentally get terms in there that aren't related to your search.
It's also not doing like, so this is what she's showing you here is kind of the auto mapping, and in systematic reviews, you actually don't use this function. You actually can't use the auto mapping function when you're doing a systematic review. It's just kind of, if you can look at the numbers, you can kind of see what the truncation really does for you. You can see that minor truncated has 328,000 plus, and the one that doesn't, that's auto mapped, is 326,000-ish. So that's, and I'll show you in a minute how the truncation can work. But just know that the auto mapping that you see here isn't what's happening during a systematic review. And then that's also, she talked about the field codes. The title abstract field code is the one that I most often use, and I'll show you the various ways that you can add that to your searching. And the importance of the field codes, whether it's title abstract or text word, is that it turns off this auto mapping. And I'll show you that momentarily too. And that's the goal, is to turn off this auto mapping in order to have reproducibility. In these searches, you want reproducibility. So if someone goes and takes your search, puts it into PubMed, they should get the same results with your date on it if they put a date filter on it. And that's kind of the goal, is reproducibility of the data. So just as a, that's kind of the importance of why we're talking about these, is both truncation has really changed in PubMed, and then title abstract and text word are how you turn off that auto mapping feature. And text word is usually used when if you need to broaden your search. If it's a really new area of research, it's very narrow, maybe searching more of those fields other than author supplied keywords, title and abstract, searching some of those other fields might pull some of those terms. So that's just important to know why those are useful. And I'll definitely show you that too.
Well,
okay.
Live demonstrations.
So it's my turn. Okay. Yes. So I'm kind of just going to share with you all my process on how I start in PubMed. I always start a systematic review in PubMed. The reason I do that is because of Mesh. And as Kayla showed you, it's a really powerful tool, and it really can help you find terms. So in this case, you can start two ways. You can start with a list of terms, or you can start with some articles that you found that would really be included in your search. So if you had your search and your results, these articles are articles you'd want to have been found by your search. So either way kind of works. I really like the way of starting with the list of articles from PubMed that you would want to include. And the reason that is because it's a great way to start to find terms. And so let me share my screen. I'm going to start with this one. So this is a search I've been working on with a colleague here at UK. And so this is me coming up with a list of terms, and you can do this in various ways. You can come up with a list of mesh terms that will work based off your question, and then keywords that will work. And that's one way to do it as well. Or you can kind of do it both ways. So the other way, I'm going to stop sharing that and share my other screen, is using articles. So in this example, I'm going to go here. There's this tool called Yale Mesh Analyzer. And what you can do is find those articles in PubMed. And every PubMed article has a PubMed ID. So if I go back over here to PubMed, I'm going to just search this article for you all. Here's one of the articles that this faculty member sent me as one that they would want to be found by their systematic review search. So every article has a PubMed ID. So they sent me these article titles. I found these PubMed IDs right here. And then I go to this Yale Mesh Analyzer, and I put all those PubMed IDs into this analyzer, and then I hit go. And what it does is it provides you this list of terms. So it's giving you all the mesh headings for all these articles. It's also giving you all the author supplied keywords. Not all articles are indexed with mesh headings, and those that are added to PubMed Central that are also indexed in PubMed don't always have those headings. Also, if they're new, if they're 2020 or even some 2019s, but mainly 2020s now, won't have indexed or won't have those mesh headings. So what I do then is I take this and I copy it and I put it into an Excel document. And what you can do then is you can kind of color code the terms. So here's what I did with these articles is I started saying, here's all my age terms, right? Here's my exercise therapy terms. Here's my follow-up study terms, my feasibility study. I start mapping these terms that are related. And then I can go back and kind of expand upon that list of terms. So I'm going to go back and show you all this. I'm going to start sharing my other screen again. So you can see that I started pulling out those mesh terms. You saw that I had resistance training and strength training and physical fitness. I have these terms, but in this case, we were really looking at low load, high velocity exercises. And there really isn't a mesh term for that in particular. So this is where you start thinking about keywords. And so we came up with a list of keywords, as you can see here. And this is often a really good example of where there's not a specific mesh term that fits your exact concept, but you still need to include the mesh term of physical fitness or resistance training, and then or together some of those terms that are more specific, like low load, high velocity exercises. So we developed this term list. So now you have a term list and you kind of have it, and you can break it down into areas that you're interested in, right? So if we're wanting to look at people who are frail in this case, who have specific diseases like RA or chronic disease, or they're pre-fail or have MS, we're going to start looking at all those terms and then start kind of grouping things together. So that's kind of how you come up with a term list. I also go in and I check all of these. So for example, I'm going to go to my mesh terms here. I'm sorry, my internet thing has disappeared on me. Okay, sorry about that. I must have accidentally exited out of it. Okay. Oh, okay. So here's MESH, and you can actually find this by going to the Med Center website and scrolling down from Intro to PubMed, and then clicking MESH right here. And that's going to take you to the MESH database. So like, for example, if I want to check my resistance training definition and see if there's any terms I'm missing, I go here to resistance training. I see that it was added in 2019. Here's all of the entry terms. So weight bearing strengthening program, weightlifting, resistance training, strength training, so forth. And here's all the different trees that it's in. So if I search resistance training, it's going to be searching all of these variants. And there's not really a prior index term. So that's something that I know and I can make note of. So once we have this, I'm going to show you how you kind of start building stuff in PubMed. So I go through and I check all these terms, right? And we have that list that I showed you. So we're going to go back to PubMed. And we're going to go to this advanced feature. So what I tend to do is I kind of build things line by line. So I'm going to actually pull up my Excel sheet for myself so I can, and then I'll show you all kind of how I export and report this data as well. But then I'm going to start with my population terms. So I had things like frail and stroke and osteoarthritis. I had all those type of terms. So I'm going to start with that. So if I pick pre-frail, I'm just going to copy and paste my terms over from my search. You can type title abstract. You can do this yourself, or you can go up here and start typing pre-frail. And you can check the index. This is what Kayla was talking earlier about searching known phrases or known terms. So this shows that pre-frail is in the database 692 times. So I know that adding this term is going to get me results. And then if you don't want to remember TIAB or TW or whatever those acronyms are, you can also use this dropdown. And here's title abstract here. I always recommend starting with title abstract. If the results are not really what you're looking for, then we could start looking at things like text word searching, but really title abstract is where you want to go. So if you see this, I'm going to check my index. I click that. You can see that it adds my title abstract here. And then I have pre-frail. And then let's say I want to consider truncating this. So if I hit add, I'm going to add this to my history. You can see that it has 681. If I go here, I'm going to, this is also a really great tool, is you can just add with and or not delete. So let me actually, so if you go here, I can add query. And then I'm going to truncate. So this is going to get any variation of frail. So I add to history, 836. So you can see that it is picking up things quite a bit, actually, over 150-ish articles that the truncation is getting us. So then, and I continue to do that. So now I want to look at frail, and then I can hit add to history. So you can see that it doesn't really matter if you do title abstract or TIAB, it's all going to be the same for you. And then let's say I'm going to add my stroke mesh term, because this is all from that list I showed you earlier. I add stroke, and then I'm going to add stroke here. I'm doing the keyword now. And then I'm also going to use some of the entry terms like cerebrovascular accident. And then I'm going to use the variation, or the abbreviation, not variation, the abbreviation. And one thing about truncation is it has to be more than 3 terms. So in this case, I would want to do CVA or CVAS title abstract. Those are 2 abbreviations that we know of for cerebrovascular accident. So you can't truncate anything lower than 3 letters. So like hip, you'd have to do hip or hips. You couldn't truncate hip. So you add to history. And then our next one is, so this is all of our stroke-like terms. So then what I do is I kind of create groups. So I go, I'm going to add stroke, and then I'm going to OR all of these like terms together like this, and then add to history. So there's my little stroke grouping. And then I'm going to do that again with my osteoarthritis terms. So these are all defining my population at this point. So I'm going to add that to my history, and then I'm going to look at variations. So here is an example. I'm just copying. I'll show you what this looks like in an Excel document too. But here's what I did. And I'm going to put this in here and then I'll explain what I did. I'm going to add to history. Okay. So I was looking here at my truncation. So I have the mesh term, but then I have these variants. And these all came from the entry term list inside of mesh. And I kind of debate where I want to truncate things. So what a little trick you can do is you can actually OR all three of these together to double check yourself, and you hit add to history, and you can see that this truncated version has the same number as this truncated version, or as all of these together. So what that tells you is that all you really need to use is this truncated version. You don't need to use all of these variants. So in this case, I would take my mesh term and this one variant, hit OR, and add to history. And that is going to get me my osteoarthritis terms. It's going to catch all of those variants that were the entry terms inside of PubMed. And then you continue to do this. And I usually break it up into kind of like a PICO idea, as you have your population terms together. So you go through and add, in this case, all the arthritis terms next, all the Parkinson's disease terms, the multiple sclerosis, chronic disease terms, and I kind of build a population search together. And so you can kind of see the process. The reason you do it this way is that you can keep notes and records on why you included and excluded certain terms. And that's important because a reviewer might come back and say, why didn't you include this variant? Or why didn't you do this? So it's important to remember, and honestly, I don't remember 6 months from now when it's being reviewed, why I did a certain thing. So it's just important to do this and take notes on it. And I will show you all how I do that too. There's this download feature. So you can actually do about 100 queries before you need to export them to save your search history. And when you download it, you're going to get a CSV file that can be opened up in Excel. I usually save that file as an Excel worksheet because then I can use color coding and some of the text wrapping to make it more viewable. So let me actually show you what that looks like. Here. So can you all see my Excel sheet?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was like, it didn't highlight green like it normally does. So here is what I was showing you all. Here's my frail, here's my stroke, and I can actually zoom in a little bit for you too, so you can kind of see this a little bit closer. You can see here's my stroke, my osteoarthritis, and you can see where I keep building. And then I use colors to tell myself which terms I'm going to be using. So, and this is how I double check myself, right? So here's this, I ORed all these together, and you can see why I'm using this truncated term versus all the variants. This is just double checking yourself. So we do this all with the population. And you can see this kind of looks just like it does inside of the PubMed thing I showed you. And then you get this ORed thing. You start going back and you OR all of those green ones that I highlighted together to get this population term, right? And this is, and then you do, and it's essentially that same process again inside of PubMed. Here's all my exercise pieces: exercise therapy, resistance training, muscle strength, physical fitness, physical endurance, and then here's this. And then here's my next terms. Like here's all those ones that don't really have mesh terms, like low load, high velocity. And I keep building, right? And then you get this muscle power term. And I usually highlight those in blue or green. That's just what I do. You can use whatever color you want. So then I know at the end which ones I'm combining. So now this has all of these terms. This has all of these terms. And this one has all my population terms. So then all I have to do is go back to PubMed and copy these in. So I will show you how I do that. And I'm doing this in PubMed and exporting it to Excel just because PubMed doesn't have a permanent place to always save these results in a way that I think is very useful. You can't keep notes with it. You can see that I keep notes. I use asterisks to things. I say that this one was too large, proves that I should use a shorter truncated term. I keep notes in these so I know why I did certain things. And you just really can't do that inside of PubMed itself. So I'm going to go back now to my PubMed. So now I'm going to show you all how I build this. So you all saw that I had those 3 strings together, right? So here's what I'm going to do now that I have those 3 strings. So here's all my population group. I'm going to hit add to history. And then I'm going to go pull that exercise therapy group and hit add to history. And then I'm going to go pull that low load, high velocity string and add to history. And now I have my 3 sections here, and I can use this piece of PubMed where you can add queries. I'm going to hit add query. There's my population. Here's my exercise therapy. And here's the low load, high velocity I'm interested in. And so I ANDed all 3 of those together because I want them all, I want the articles to be about all 3 things. And I hit add to history. And here's my results. So you can continue to build up inside of PubMed. So you don't really have to know all your Boolean operators. You don't have to know all your title abstract shortcuts. You can really use this. You can use title abstract. You can even use mesh. But I would really, it will let you search something that's a mesh term that isn't mesh. So just be aware that you need to double check that the term you're using is a mesh term. You can also, as Kayla showed you all earlier, you can go here to resistance training. Again, add to history, hit search PubMed, and then go to advanced. And then you can see what it's doing. So you can see also that the auto mapping is turned off because you don't see any of that translation piece that Kayla showed you in the PowerPoint earlier. And this is what's really important about a systematic review search is you want to make sure that everything has a field code because that means the auto mapping is not turned on. So in this case, that is how you do that. So that's really how I build a systematic review search. It's kind of the nitty gritty. It's very time consuming, but that is the process. It's just a time consuming process of documentation and exporting. And it's really important, again, to make sure you're exporting every like 100 or even like 90 search strings, just so you're not losing any data. And you can always copy and paste that into your Excel document. So I'm going to stop my share. I know that's a lot of information and really just kind of the nitty gritty of how you use PubMed to do a systematic review. I actually will show you one other thing kind of about that internet-based interventions example we talked about earlier. Let me go back here to my Chrome. So I'm going to I want to show you internet. This is a really good example of a new term that was added. So it was added in 2020. here's all the entry terms, and then here's one of those previously indexed terms. I don't think we had shown you all one of those yet. So if you click this, you can go back and see that everything that was an internet-based intervention prior to 2020 was indexed under the internet. So this is just an example of what that looks like. And if you're going to be going back to so systematic reviews, you have to have a very specific reason to have a date filter put onto something. And you usually do that through the search feature, and I can show you that too. The previous index terms, if you were going back to the beginning of time on this, you'd want to even include this computer communication networks. But really, internet-based interventions probably only came into the research maybe 10 to 20 years ago, right? When people started having access to mobile devices. So I've worked on a systematic review search for this, and we only really went back to like the early 2000s. So I really only needed to include internet and internet-based interventions. So this is all stuff you kind of have to think about when you're doing, when you're looking at these type of mesh terms and trying to figure out what terminology to use. And then the date filter. So if you have it, when you're searching PubMed, when doing a systematic review, you really should not be using any of these filters over here, because those are not replicable. They're not reproducible. So what I usually recommend is going to advance and then hitting date create. And this is the date that you should use for systematic reviews. It's the most stable date available inside of PubMed. The other dates can change, they can be modified. So it's the date that the record was created is probably the most reliable one. So in this case, if we wanted to do 2013, June 01 to, let's say we wanted to do 2020, 1031, and I hit add, and I'm going to add to my history, and then I can go back and I can take this one, add query, and then this date range with it and add to history. So, and then you can see that it's reduced your results. So that is date ranges. So yeah, that's pretty much all that I had. So we can definitely take questions now, if anyone has any questions about this topic. You're more welcome to unmute yourself or leave something in the chat. Thank you for coming, everyone. We'll stay on just in case you all need if you have any questions. Again, the systematic review guide is a really great place to go. We do consults. So if you have questions, if you're planning on working on a systematic review, we do offer 2 models of service. Usually we can act as a consultant. We can help you through the process. And we also do like a co-authorship model where we will help you and actually do the searches and work with you as a consultant in that way. So there's kind of 2 different models, but we do have a consult form that you can fill out on the systematic review guide.